Welcome, Frankfort and Franklin County residents, and thank you for tuning in to the Candidate Forum for Frankfort City Commission, general election held on November 5th, 2024. I'm J.C. Young, and I'm honored to serve on the Chamber of Government Affairs Committee and your moderator for this event. The obligations of a Frankfort City Commissioner are multifaceted. In our form of municipal government in Frankfort, our City Commission is composed of 4 commissioners and the mayor. All legislative and executive authority is vested within the commission. The City Commission establishes all appointive offices, promulgates codes, rules, regulations necessary for health, safety, and the welfare of the residents of Frankfort. The Commission provides for sufficient revenue to operate the city and appropriates funds in an annual budget. The Commission also creates the office of the City Manager and sets the qualifications for that office. It's important to note in this election, if you're registered to vote in the city limits, you can vote for up to 4 candidates, which is stated on the ballot. The office that you're seeking has a storied history in our state's capital city, and it's worthy of candidates such as yourselves. In this candidate forum for Frankfort City Commission, we're honored to have Miss Katima Smith-Willis, Mr. Kelly May, Miss Leesa Unger, Miss Anna Marie Rosen, Mr. Delvin Azofeifa, and Mr. Rob Richardson. Before we begin, I'd like to thank and recognize the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce members and staff for establishing this candidate forum, and the Frankfort Plant Board for hosting and broadcasting this event. Serving as our esteemed panelists and those doing the real work at this function are Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce President and CEO, Ms. Tish Shade, owner and operator of Canoe Kentucky and Kentucky River Tours, Mr. Nathan Deppenbrock, Chair of the Chamber Governmental Affairs Committee and Frankfort Plant Board Communications Director, Ms. Kathy Lindsay. Candidates, each of you will have 2 minutes for opening remarks and then 2 minutes for closing remarks. You'll have 1-minute responses to questions, and we have a timekeeper. We're going to start with our candidates from right to left. We're going to work down the row, and we're going to start with you, Ms. Smith-Willis. This is your opening statement, and you're going to be this camera right here. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I, too, want to thank the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce and Frankfort Plant Board. My name is Katima Smith-Willis. I am running for City Commissioner. I am a lifelong resident of Frankfort, Kentucky. I attended Franklin County High School, but I did graduate from Penn Foster High School. Been here all my life, and I genuinely enjoy it. I am a working citizen, of course. I've been in the bar and hospitality industry since I could serve, so 20 in a day. And currently, right now, I do work at Castle & Key as the bar and food manager out at that distillery. I am seeking this office because I genuinely care about our community. I have been on all parts of the community, I would like to say. I have been working, I have been not working. I've been seeking things from this community and resources, and I've had the opportunity to meet people in this community that ask me for help a lot. So I figured, why not start in this level of leadership and work my way up one day? So I am super excited and really happy and honored to be here, and I also want to thank the panel.
Thank you. Mr. May, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Young, for being here today. Thank you to the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce, Frankfort Plant Board for hosting this, and to the candidates for being here as well. Frankfort, I've had the absolute pleasure of serving as your city commissioner for the past 3.5 years. I'm born and raised here. I have chosen to raise my family here, my wife, and I have 2 amazing daughters that dictate every decision that I make in my life, both professionally and personally. We have had the absolute pleasure of running 2 businesses in our downtown district, one for about 9.5 years and another for a little over 5 years. And over that time, I've had the opportunity to really listen and understand the wants and needs of this business community that is so vital to the economic growth of this community, that will help foster and fund our plans and the decisions that we need to make to see the continued growth that we all know is possible. Without a doubt, this has been the most humbling experience of my life. And again, the opportunity to listen and understand what the needs and wants are of this community. I look forward to continuing to carry those things forward with all the decisions that I make. And thank you for this opportunity and experience.
Ms. Unger, 2 minutes.
My name is Leesa Unger. I am running to hopefully continue to be one of your Frankfort City Commissioners. I believe my work ethic, yes, attitude, and just sort of my out-of-box thinking has already helped shape some of the progress over the past 3.5 years. Our first term, or my first term when I came in, we were under a state of emergency, occupational tax was down, everything is back to normal now, and we're seeing those numbers and also all the progress and groundwork that we have laid in the past 3.5 years. For example, I can't not mention the $150 million development, the paddocks, where Target's coming in, as well as other businesses. With the help of city staff, local and state partners, we were able to facilitate that for a property owner that had been trying to develop that for about 40 years. Our board has also approved all zone changes that have come across our desk, incentives to support growth and development, including 2 TIF districts, an IRB, and a KBI, as well as lowering sewer tap fees. I feel like we support city staff really well. We passed ordinances like paid family leave that I think is really important. Provided pay raises, as well as supporting citizens in certain ways, and for example, hiring our first and second community policing advocate in our town. So I'm just really proud of the groundwork that we've laid, and I think it would be an absolute honor to continue to work hard for the citizens of Frankfort. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ms. Rosen, 2 minutes.
Okay. Hello, I'm Anna Marie Rosen. I want to thank the Frankfort Plant Board and the Chamber for hosting this event. It's good for the community to hear what we have to say, and also for all of us to understand the backgrounds of the candidates, since 4 of us will be working together after the election. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, and worked for 3M Company, being transferred to Austin, Texas for 25 years. After it became extreme drought and heat, we decided to move someplace else, my husband and I, Richard. We've been here 15 years, and we chose the city of Frankfort because it offered a cooler climate, but also amenities, a nice community, and within driving distance of larger cities if we want that. Here in Frankfort, since 2010, I have served on the Frankfort Plant Board for 4 years, 2 years as chair. I have been a member of Focus on Race Relations, Kentucky Conservation Committee, and also Walk Bike Frankfort. And for 8 months in 2022, I was appointed as a city commissioner and focused in on budget and finance. I see the potential for Frankfort, and I hope to improve people's lives by reducing utility bills, increase the city's income through economic development, and that we need to set aside land for industrial development to attract businesses, and work on projects that will help the environment, such as planting more trees and native plants in our parks, improving our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Azofeifa, you have 2 minutes.
I want to thank the Frankfort Plant Board and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. As the old adage says, iron sharpens iron. And I am here because I am in love with this community, and I have been since I've been here in 2006. In my regular life, I'm a school teacher. I teach financial literacy and world history. And because of that, I believe that if I'm able to teach complex economic ideas to high school kids who some read on a 4th grade level, then I should be able to explain those basic ideas to whoever else is on the commission who might not understand those things. For example, anybody knows that you can't spend more than you bring in. Anybody knows that it's a bad idea to chase good money after bad. Everybody knows that it's a bad idea to take advantage of taxpayers who, some are like myself with 2 jobs, my wife with 2 jobs. There are those out there with fixed incomes. Every time we have tax hikes, it affects those types of families. Now, for some, it doesn't matter if you continue to raise taxes because they are in a advantageous financial situation where no matter how high the taxes are, they'll be able to be protected from those tax raises. I'm not like those people. I'm an average, everyday person. My son, who is 22 today, happy birthday, son, who played basketball at Franklin County, football at Franklin County, he wrestled at Franklin County, he ran track, and probably some other things that I've forgotten about. And I'm the president of the Hickory Hills Neighborhood Association, and if I can do it for my neighborhood, I can do it for Frankfort.
Thank you. Happy birthday to your son. Thank you. Mr. Richardson, 2 minutes, opening remarks.
First, I'd like to thank the plant board and the chamber. I'm real humbled here. Never thought I'd be sitting in this. My wife and I have lived in this community for 30 years. I spent 25 of those years working for the city of Frankfort. Retired as assistant police chief there, and I continue in law enforcement in a capacity as a special deputy with the Franklin County SO, as well as teaching law enforcement classes all across the Commonwealth as well as the United States. You know, my wife and I love this community. My wife is very vested. She's worked here in banking in this community a long time. We've raised our children here. My oldest daughter just purchased a home here. So a lot of people ask why. Well, I probably have the most experience of anyone sitting up here when it comes to city government. You see, I know the history of things that worked, things that didn't work, and I also know a few things about public safety, which is one of my platforms, as well as economic growth. Frankfort, when I came here in the early 90s, we was kind of booming, but not a lot has changed. Not a lot has changed. Some things have remained the same. Our sewer systems that are in desperate need, we've kicked the can down the road, and that's going to be coming up soon. I've familiarized myself very much with that. The other part of government that's so important is accountable leadership and transparency. Holding people accountable when tough decisions need to be made and putting the right people in positions. What I mean by that is in a ranked structure, if someone beneath me cannot do their job, it's not my job to do their job. So I think the city is moving in the right direction, but I do think it's time for a little bit of change, and we need sustainable economic growth.
Thank you all for your opening statements. Our first question is going to begin with Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce President and CEO, Ms. Tish Shade, and that's going to be directed to you, Ms. Smith-Willis. You'll have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, so we all know that small businesses face big challenges here in Frankfort. Number one is, what do you see as the biggest challenge, and what are you going to do to address that challenge?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the biggest challenges that small businesses face is hindrance and growth with communication with the city or anything to help them grow and prosper in the community. I think we have a communication issue that I have seen and I have faced personally myself, or just from other small business owners that have reached out to me with small things such as solid waste. So I think personally, what we can do with that issue is to fix our communication skills, definitely be more transparent with the small business owners. And then I think for accountability purposes, when we hear from the citizens and our small business owners and we implement what the solutions could be, we can keep further progressing with those issues and to have more solutions. Thank you.
Mr. May, 1 minute.
Thank you for the question. I think each individual business is going to be unique, so the first thing that we have to do is listen to them, find a common complaint, find a common story or thread, and address that head on. You know, if you're investing in a property, for example, in a historic district of town, there's opportunities for the city to get involved. and help you with tax credits, supporting with grant funding as well. Certainly having the conversations with them with the public services that we do offer. There are areas that do offer recycling in our community, areas that do not, areas that do offer trash pickup for businesses, some areas that do not. So we have to make sure that we're thinking creatively on how to address the solutions for them with the individual. And then continuing to invest in the public infrastructure that surrounds their businesses. And I believe the city right now has continued to do that, and I definitely look forward to helping continue to do that.
Ms. Unger, 1 minute.
So a few things I was thinking about was the fact that we have, with our current board, gotten some online software so business owners can apply for their permits online. And I think just that going online and then promoting that to the business community is going to be really important. And already something that's been mentioned is communication issue. That's something that we are working as a board right now. We've just hired our first public information officer, and I hope that shows some changes, as well as sort of just figuring out that one-stop shop for both the city and the county. So there's no confusion for a small business owner that either wants to get started or has a question about some ongoing issues. So, yeah, basically it's listening and communication. So I'd like to help with that. Thank you.
1 minute.
Yes, thank you. Small businesses always have a hard time, and I think communicating to the public that they exist and whatever the city can do to help communicate it, that is important. I also think that improving our housing choices. There are limited housing choices at all income levels, and if we had more people here, all businesses would benefit from that. So I see that tied into a small business of enlarging their market through inviting people here to Frankfort and to find out about the businesses that exist. Thank you.
Mr. Azofeifa, 1 minute.
It's important that voters recognize rhetoric when they hear it. Rhetoric is when people have empty statements, which usually goes along with empty promises. There are usually words filled with hopes, dreams, and aspirations, but very little in terms of substance. When I think about some of the roadblocks that actually do affect some of our small businesses, then it's time that we actually attack those problems. For example, if we have people who are health inspectors who will tell a new business that they have to have equipment that they really don't need. Then they go to another inspector, and that inspector tells them a different set of qualifications that they need to become compliant. We need to get government out of the way, and we need to make government more efficient in order to help those small businesses.
Mr. Richardson, 1 minute.
I would have to concur with the communication, but also with the advertising. The chamber is a good source for small business, DFI. I would also have to say, you know, listening to the actual new business owner or developer and not have roadblocks for them with agenda items. I do feel at times some of our business, the people that want to come in here to start these new businesses are getting mixed communication. And again, that goes back to an accountable leadership style. Just because certain things are not fitting a certain way. For example, some of the buildings we have are 100-year-old buildings. We have to be able to be flexible because meeting code on those buildings may take a little more, right? We don't want the facade to change on the outside, but we've got to take a hint from other cities that I have seen that have been able to do that for new businesses.
Y'all are doing a great job. Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Mr. Deppenbrock. We're going to start with you, Mr. May. We're going to go back down and kind of work our way back. So, Mr. May, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you.
So we are in a very unique and fortunate situation to be the capital city of the state of Kentucky. With that said, it can be sometimes detrimental, especially proof with 2 bridges in our town currently failing inspections and literally cutting our town in half with very little we can actually do about it. So with lacking funds coming in from the property taxes, state employees still, many of them not being allowed to work here in our town, many of our people still come from out of town. What would you do to make sure that the state does not let the capital city struggle financially? Or what would you do to make sure that the state is paying their fair share in our town?
One of the things that we have done that most proud of is negotiating the payment in lieu of taxes with the state of Kentucky, roughly $640,000 extra annually to the bottom line. This administration has been diligent in opening up the conversation with the state of Kentucky. We invested in hiring a lobbying firm to make sure that they were there representing us during the session. Out of that, we did secure several grant fundings for the public infrastructure, including the Broadway Bridge. Now, of course, that situation has changed, but it goes back to the openness and transparency of the communication piece. Reiterating the importance of these bridges, and the infrastructure itself and the need for it here in our community.
Ms. Unger, 1 minute.
Yeah, you bring up one of our biggest issues in being a capital city. We have so many roads, bridges that are all state-owned, and Commissioner May commented on it, but I think one of the things that our board has been really good about in the last 3.5 years is communication and working together, and also being able to ask for what we think we deserve and what we've needed for years. Right, we got the $3.5 million for the Broadway Bridge. Yes, the bridge is coming down. It's possible there could be a different bridge one day. We got $11.2 million for a conference center. We're working on an RFP for that right now. So that payment in lieu of taxes is really important, but we also have to continue to work on the relationship we have with state government.
Ms. Rosen, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Yes, all capital cities have the problem of a large amount of their taxable property being part of state government. And I think in a smaller city, that's even worse. And I think working, as Leesa and Kelly have mentioned, with the state to bring them to the table to help us is important. But I also think there's some things we can do to help ourselves, and that would be industrial development. The comprehensive plan, which will mark our future for the next 20 years, is 2.5 years in writing. And by the time it's done, we'll have to start working on the 5-year plan. So I think working in partnership with the state is important, but also there are things we could do to help ourselves. And industrial development, bringing in more business, would be an important step to broaden the tax base.
Mr. Azofeifa, 1 minute.
I can't believe that we just heard people roll over and grovel to the state for what we deserve as a capital city. We have these senators and Congress people coming from all over the state, and they fund the other 119 counties with no problem. We're a capital city, and our infrastructure is failing us. And we're hearing people talk about begging the state and negotiating for the payment in lieu of taxes. It's easy for some people to say, let's just tax the rich. In this case, let's tax the rich, which is the state who have been neglecting this community. Instead of a payment in lieu of taxes, why not instead fix a situation where we actually have those taxes instead of trying to negotiate for what the state feels like we deserve instead of what we actually deserve?
Mr. Richardson, 1 minute.
I would agree on the industrial. We do need that, but the comprehensive plan did not provide enough land for that, I've been told. As far as the in lieu payment, I've been told that some of the property taxes the state could pay, it's in the millions. So a 6-figure in lieu of is going to, that's not equaling out, because what a lot of people don't know, state government workers use city services, the fire, and that are they paying that? Are we getting that fair share of that? The Singing Bridge. Let's talk about. I was working as a police officer when they closed that in 14 and 15. They kicked that can down the road. We should have been hold them accountable then. I talked to engineers that they wouldn't even walk across that back then. So that doesn't surprise me. So again, it comes back to holding these people accountable and getting some action out of them.
We end with you, Ms. Smith-Willis, 1 minute.
Thank you. So I'm a freshman in the game. This is all really new to me, and it's exciting because I have this really cool 2-year-old son that I hope he wants to stay in Frankfort for the rest of his life, kind of like me. So this is a twofold answer for me. I really do believe that development is huge. We have to, kind of like what Mr. Richardson had said, there's problems that I feel like we're facing right now that weren't thought of in the past. And so I personally want to get ahead of that and, start looking at grants now and not wait until in the future when things are falling apart. And development is huge. We need people to work here. We need people to want to come to our community and stay. And I think that will contribute to the tax and the growth of the tax base. So like I said, it's twofold. I think that we really need to start looking at things now, seeing what we're experiencing now to be able to plan for the future.
Great job. Our next question comes from the incomparable Kathy Lindsay. That's going to be directed to you, Ms. Unger. You'll have 1 minute to respond. We're going to go that way again.
Okay, I'm just following up just a little bit. I had several people mention the comprehensive plan. It's been the subject of discussion here in our community for quite some time. Mm-hmm. So my question is, do you believe that it includes sufficient plans for growth? And what are your priorities for the plan, and how do they affect local businesses?
Let's see. One group of people in the community might say the plan has enough industrial. Another might say that it doesn't. I feel like we've been working on it long enough, and I've heard that, the committees that have put time and effort into it feel like this is the best plan we can get, and so I'm supportive of moving forward and seeing what we have. I do think that industrial is best down 127 South, and as far as I've heard, it is there. It's just not enough acreage. But yeah, I'm ready to get this approved at the Planning Commission level so we can then move forward and see what we can do.
Ms. Rosen, 1 minute.
Yes, the comprehensive plan, 2.5 years. Most municipalities can complete a comprehensive plan in a year, maybe a year and a quarter. So we have some internal problems with that. And the purpose of the plan is to set aside zoned areas so that we don't have sprawl. Currently, the comprehensive plan allows for 500 acres of industrial development, which is important for the community because it brings in high-level jobs down to employing high school graduates. The problem that we have of the 500 acres is that 250 of those acres were in agricultural land, urban warehouses that got rezoned as industrial. So there's really only 250 acres for the next 20 years set aside in the comprehensive plan. This is inadequate. This is less growth than we have seen currently. So we need to rethink that. It is not complete yet, and it needs to be in terms that we can work with.
Honestly, at this point, I'm sick of plans. I'm ready for action. When we think about the plans where we destroyed our convention center and replaced it with a parking garage that nobody even wanted, it's time for us to think about the reality of the situation. Sure, I have to concede that there is area along 127 for potential industrial growth, but the reality is we don't even have sewer that goes out there. And we know that without that critical infrastructure, you're not going to have any businesses, homes, or anything built out there without having the sewer system taken care of. So we can't put the cart before the horse. We have to take care of those basic necessities first.
Mr. Richardson, 1 minute.
Well, Kathy, I'd agree. You heard I said it earlier in the other one. No, it's not sufficient. And a plan. I'm about a plan. I'm okay with plans, but you revisit it. That's what you do. You're telling me we can't open discussions to look at this and revisit that. We have to. We also have to look at people that have agendas. It's obvious. I've talked to certain builders in this town. They build a lot. There are itineraries or agendas for some of these people that want no growth. If we don't have growth, I can tell you I'm looking at $30 million of our $47 million budget is from insurance license, 1.9 occupational tax, state government withholdings, and 1.5 business. So you see, that's $30 million of our $47 million. That's over half. We have got to have new revenue, and that's where this comes in. If we don't grow, then we're going to have to cut services. That's what will happen.
Ms. Smith-Willis, 1 minute.
Thank you. I also want to thank the people that took the time to really build out that comprehensive plan. It was something new for me to read. I was very educated along the way, scaling through that. I do believe the comprehensive plan mentioned that 59% of the people in this community are under the age of 44. And it just made me think about, it goes back to workforce development and kind of, I think things can always be restructured. I do believe there are things in the comprehensive plan that can be revisited and tweaked a little bit more and to be kind of honed in on so we can fix the issues that we're seeing now within the comprehensive plan to be able to find solutions. So in terms of the land that we were speaking on, I just think we need to be more intentional moving forward with the comprehensive plan so we can move on these plans and not be so stagnant.
Mr. May, 1 minute.
I think the important thing that we have to remember when it comes to our growth, and we're talking about industrial or infill, is that, the community, the leaders, we all need to remember that it can be both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. The process of the plan, I was able to watch for the first time as a commissioner. I trusted the process. I do believe that it's very important at this point that we get it approved. I personally believe, the biggest opportunity for us to gain the largest return on our dollar is industrial growth. I think we have an opportunity to increase that industrial growth in our community. And I think there will always be that opportunity to revisit the needs, but it's important to remember that this plan will hold us to a pretty strict set of guidelines as we move forward.
Next question, we're going to start back down here with you, Ms. Shade. And we're going to start with Ms. Rosen. We're going to go that direction. Ms. Rosen, you have 1 minute to respond.
Frankfort has nearly 40 empty storefronts and shopping centers. What are your plans to encourage new business to occupy these storefronts and for infill?
That is a critical question, considering the fact that the new paddocks will be coming in. And if we don't grow the number of people living here, we can't support that business plus the businesses we have. I believe that the paddocks, the Target especially, will pull from the businesses we have, from Kroger, from Walmart, from smaller businesses. And so what we need to do is increase housing at all income levels and also at the same time work on housing for the unhoused or shelter for the unhoused. So I think that having more retail without growing the population is a flaw. And we need to develop parcels B and C downtown, which I understood will include housing. The paddocks originally included housing, and the new developer didn't want to do that part, which I think is a real loss for the community.
Mr. Azofeifa, 1 minute.
When it comes to infill, I think there are several things that can be done. Some of it depends on the type of business. For example, if you're talking about one of the neglectful out-of-state or maybe even out-of-country landlords who have dilapidated buildings that are falling down, then we need to enact eminent domain so that we can make it a safer community and to make these buildings up to code so that people would be able to go into those buildings. And the other thing that we can do to encourage infill is by developing the human capital that's already here in Frankfort. For example, we have the School of Innovation. We have great things coming out of Franklin County, and we need to be able to invest in our young people and to give them the opportunity to start businesses themselves and to help fill those buildings.
Mr. Richardson, 1 minute.
The first one I'm going to mention is Steel Blue that wanted to open a business here in the old Sears building. The city didn't help them. They didn't help it at all. They went to Georgetown, 75 manufacturing jobs. I talked to both the owners. Second, we need to hold these people that own these buildings accountable, especially for code violations. I'll mention it. It's a tough subject. The old Y needs to come down. I was there when they ran dye in the sewer system. It ran all over the hillside. All right? There's nothing underneath that building, and it is a danger to the area. As far as new development, housing, all about that. I worked here when they wanted to develop a neighborhood into Collins Lane in that wooded area. Shot down, was blocked. So you can see how things are progressing, how things are not progressing, so to speak. The same things have happened, and I've witnessed it for almost 30 years. We are responsible for making sure someone like Steel Blue to talk to these people to see what we can do to get them. That's 75 manufacturing jobs we lost to Georgetown.
Ms. Smith-Willis, 1 minute.
I said that percentage earlier about the youth and under 44 is because there's people here that are willing to build and to contribute to our community. I think that in terms of this platform that I'm standing on, it's all about accessibility. I think that seeking public input when it comes to infill is crucial and important because there's people that are here that have ideas that just need a chance. And I think it's worth reaching out to our community. And then I also think, in terms of just communication, I think that we need to look at our surrounding counties because I feel like people are booming around us and we're just being stagnant. So I think these conversations are crucial in this with this topic when it comes to infill because if we look within, maybe we can start building around and growing as well.
Mr. May, 1 minute.
I believe we need to be strategic in the approach to filling the empty storefronts. We start by reaching out to our quasi-government agencies, the chamber, reaching out to KCDC and to DFI, and asking them, what are people saying that the community is lacking? What are we in need of? What are you hearing from your members? Where is there a gap to be filled? And then going out and identifying those properties that would meet the demands and needs of those individual businesses. Finding out, again, back to those unique properties that Frankfort has in our historic areas. They can be incredibly challenging, potentially cost prohibitive for new business owners to start a new business in a property like that. So it's important that we have all the resources, again, back to that one-stop shop mentality in City Hall for those that are coming to our community to invest, that they can get all the answers and resources as efficient as possible.
Thank you.
Ms. Unger, 1 minute.
Yeah, empty storefronts and shopping centers are an issue, and they are key to figuring out infill development. We got to work on communication. I know specifically for some empty downtown properties, the city just received a $750,000 federal grant to help with historic properties. That's a program that we need to discuss and figure out how to implement, but we've done something similar in the past at the city. And some of those properties that received some of those grants, I think back in 19, are where the HOC Bourbon House is now, Engine House. I know the where Goodwood is located, as well as the Peach properties, which I hope will soon be apartments in the future. So I think that, we've got great ideas. We'll apply for the grants that can hopefully help with some of these empty storefronts and fix them up for future businesses.
Our next question comes from Mr. Deppenbrock. That's going to be directed towards Mr. Azofeifa. You'll have 1 minute to respond. Mr. Richardson will come to you next.
So tourism is arguably the biggest asset we have in our town, according to many, especially being home to one of the most visited distilleries in the world, also being home to the Kentucky River and the Elkhorn Creek. Frankfort lost its convention center and the tourism businesses that went away with it. Tourism is an important part of building our local economy by supporting local services and the amenities that come with that, such as restaurants, shopping, hotels, Airbnbs, etc. Tourism dollars improve our local quality of life and allow us to showcase our beautiful community. So as a city commissioner, what do you plan to do to increase tourism in Frankfort?
Because I'm from Louisville, I'm used to businesses on the riverfront. That's a normal thing to people in Louisville. We have prime real estate here in Frankfort to do exactly that. But as a lot of people do know, the city commission normally doesn't talk to the actual people involved, the actual stakeholders involved. They will generally come up with some type of feasibility study, and this is normally done at the expense of taxpayers by out-of-state firms. And it's about time that we talk to people here in Frankfort who actually have their livelihoods dependent on the river to find out what can we do to help them to expand their businesses? What can we do to help them to develop other businesses? And this is what we need to do here in Frankfort, make sure to capitalize on that riverfront.
Mr. Richardson, 1 minute.
I'd have to agree. The riverfront is big. Go to Ashland. Go to Owensboro. Go to Newport. Go to Covington. We have an oasis there, and we need to develop that as best we can with smart plans. Buffalo Trace. My wife and our daughter works there. They're set for a record year of visitors. But let me explain this to you. On Saturday morning, when you go down to have breakfast, we got one breakfast place downtown. It's packed. Nobody in there is from Frankfort. I love that. And we have to capitalize on how do we do that? You know, I'm looking for ambassadors for our city, right? That's the chamber, that's DFI, and that's great. But I'm looking to ways that we can capitalize on all these people coming down. No different than anything we have. We need to publicize all that we have, but we have to grow to do that. I'm all about the convention center. I am. But we have to pay our bills first. I'm for all of that. But we have services that have to be dealt with first. That's first and foremost. But the convention center, I do think it would bring it.
Smith-Willis, you got 1 minute.
This is a really good question. I remember a time, it's weird to even say I remember a time, but I remember a time where growing up, the convention center was the spot. I mean, we had all the sports games, all the conferences going on. There were things to do, and I appreciate the distilleries that we have that contribute to our community. I have also had opportunity to work for local restaurants that support the Bourbon Trail and things as such. So the amenities are there. I think that we need a strategic plan to approach when it comes to growing our tourism. But we want to support our businesses that are here so they can continue to support and maybe even grow. So to piggyback off of Mr. Richardson, it's crazy that we only have one place or two to direct people when it comes to tourism. So I think that we need to support what's here so we can grow and even help them maybe expand as well.
Mr. May, 1 minute.
One of the really exciting things going on right now for the tourism market is the addition of roughly 80 new hotel rooms that will be opening up by the end of the year, of course, across 3 different hotels. Proud, right now of our road crews that are down there making the necessary improvements to the public infrastructure again so that we put our best aesthetic foot forward for those tourists that are coming in. We have to remember that yes, they will provide an immense amount of revenue for us, but they will also put an immense amount of stress and wear and tear on our public infrastructure while they're here. So we have to be prepared for that as well and thinking long term. Continuing to invest again and support and bolster the existing business community that provides those services to the tourists that are here, and continuing to run shuttle services for them to get to and from bourbon tourism spots, and helping out the existing businesses. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, tourism is really important to Frankfort. I think one of the first meetings that I had was about conveying a piece of property to a future hotel on Broadway. So that's about to open here, and I heard maybe at the end of the month. So I feel like I'm here to support anything related to tourism, anything related to business. It's just a really important industry for us. Also, we're actively implementing our downtown and riverfront master plan. We actually, as our board, we secured a property on the riverfront. We're going to be working on stabilization, so flooding hopefully isn't an issue for this future development. It's really, really important to us, and we've got to be able to tell that story on what we're working on and what that future looks like.
So everyone has offered excellent suggestions for increasing tourism and working with tourism. So I have a few things I can add, and I agree with what other people have mentioned. One thing I've noticed is that we have a river that actually flows through our city. Louisville has a river on one side, and Lexington has no river. So we have a feature that we haven't fully engaged with, and that would be something good to do, and possibly a pedestrian bridge at some point. I'd also like to mention that my husband and I have funded murals and sculptures downtown, and the idea behind that was to make downtown more attractive to people, but also it's economic development. It's to draw people here. And when there are specific activities, we do have a vibrant downtown, and when nothing specific is going on, even Saturday night can be dead. So thinking about ways for more people to live downtown would increase that and support those businesses that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Kathy Lindsay, and it goes to Mr. Rob Richardson, and you'll have 1 minute to respond.
Okay. Frankfort currently runs as a city manager form of government. In the past year or so, the City Commission considered putting an item on the ballot to change Frankfort city government to full-time mayor form of government. Is that something you would support? Why or why not?
That's a good question, because I know governments work both ways. I think that would be a vote of the people, obviously, on what they want. As far as supporting that, it has challenges, because a full-time mayor is not what we have now. So if you run over a mayoral government, that has to be a full-time mayor position, and they run the day-to-day operations like our city manager does. I think in the past city managers have done a good job. I think currently they do a good job. But I do think that we have to be careful about if we're going to change our form of government, right? I would have to say that in the current system we have now is working, but I don't think that it's a knee-jerk reaction with just saying, hey, we need a full-time mayor. To say I would support it, that's kind of, I'm riding the fence on that. I know that, but if that is the vote of the people, absolutely I would support it.
Smith-Willis, 1 minute.
That is a really good question. It definitely should be a community initiative. I think that we should seek input as well from our community, first and foremost. I also think we should educate our community. I don't think a lot of people really understand how the inner workings go within our city government. So I think it would be crucial to make sure that we educate everybody first before we just make that quick decision. Do I support it? I think that from what I've experienced and from what I've seen as a citizen, I think that we've had a slight turnover in city managers. So I do believe that, maybe pivoting and giving the mayor full discretion, I think that it would be interesting to see. But I think that I would want to hear from the community first and kind of do my own research, to be honest.
Mr. May, 1 minute.
For me, it would have to come from the citizens, and I would absolutely support whatever their decision was. In communities around us that have made the change or put it on the ballot, the initiatives have started on the citizen level. I think that's really important that it starts there. I believe that the citizens know what they want. I think the education piece is crucial there, that everyone understands the magnitude of a switch like that, from changing over services and combining services and what that looks like. So for me, not only does it need to start on the citizen level, I need to see a plan that supports the transition in an efficient way and has actually been thought out. So, yeah, for me, I leave it up to the people.
Ms. Unger, 1 minute.
I also agree that I believe it should be a citizen-led initiative, and that should be voted on if that's what the citizens would like. I would be supportive of that idea myself, but I feel like education has been mentioned as an important part. I'd like to shout out to Together Frankfort for holding a forum on forms of government and how they're different. If you haven't watched that or didn't attend, I think it should be on the Plant Board's YouTube channel, and that is very educational. Also, as a commissioner, we lost an amazing city manager because she was honestly overloaded. And so we decided to hire another full-time city manager and an assistant to try to keep, just help out, divvy out some of those duties, and honestly keep the city running smoother. So I feel like that was a success.
Ms. Rosen, 1 minute.
Yes, I have considered both forms of government, city manager and a mayor, directing everything happening in the city. And I think the city manager form of government works for us. The day-to-day issues are handled by a city manager, and that the commission and the mayor work on issues of development and future ideas and more original thinking type of things versus the day-to-day concerns. So I think we have a good system. I am open to whatever residents might have as concerns, but I think their concerns are mainly founded when there's disagreement and a manager leaves for whatever reason. So I think the system we are working with is effective, and that we just need to try harder.
Mr. Azofeifa, 1 minute.
I teach history, and because of that, I recognize that the reason this is even coming up as an issue is because of the high turnover with city managers. But if we get to the root of that, why do we have such a high turnover of city managers? Well, it's because we have a good old boys club 3-3 vote that's able to oust the city manager at any given time. And if you are a city manager, how can you work under that type of pressure dealing with 3 people who can come to you and say, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, then we're going to vote you out? If anything, we need to increase that vote to what I believe unanimous vote to make sure that our city manager form of government is more effective. As far as the mayor as a full-time, if Taylor Swift moved to Frankfort, y'all know she'd become mayor, and I don't think I'd like her changes.
We're going back to the top. We're going to start with you, Ms. Tish Shade, and this will be directed towards Ms. Smith-Willis. You'll have 1 minute to respond.
What differentiates you from everybody else sitting at this table?
That's a good question. Thank you. I think what differentiates me is I am a part of that demographic that's growing in Frankfort. I am a very much so a newbie. I'm not going to sit up here and say I have all this experience, but what I do have is a set skill set of leadership skills. I serve on the commission on race and access to opportunities. I am on Focus on Race Relations Board. I have just a really good, fresh, new set of skills. I want to learn. I don't want to get up here and think that I know everything. I want to take in all the education that I can. I think that I have a really good set of examples up here. I mean, I've learned, I've watched, and I've input myself in this community. So I think that I'm ready. And I think that I'm ready to come to the table and listen to the community and then hopefully implement change over time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. May, 1 minute.
My experience investing in the community from a business standpoint has given me a unique perspective that has helped me understand the subtle nuances of owning a business in the capital city. I believe that unique perspective, it helps me in all decisions that I've made. You know, government isn't a business, if you will, but you have to make business decisions, you know, everything from balancing the budgets, personnel decisions, decisions on where to make investments. And I believe that uniqueness has given me a wonderful approach to the way in which I think about making decisions.
Ms. Unger, 1 minute.
I think one thing that I always consider myself is a team player. So I'm here to work with others, listen, take that information, and process from there. So it really comes down to, I think, my openness and willingness to listen and do what I can for others, to be able to work together, and really just doing this for the team of Frankfort. It's not about me. It's never been about a single person. It is about bettering the entire community. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Ms. Rosen, 1 minute.
Yes. So I have a somewhat varied background. My first degree was in studio art in Duluth, Minnesota. Then I worked for 3M as a product development engineer for 25 years. So I saw a large multinational company and how they functioned, and also see myself as a very small business person working on etching, printmaking, and working with galleries. So I have a varied background. I've also lived different places, St. Paul, Austin, Texas, watched it grow from 500,000 to well over a million people in just 2 decades. So I have a varied background, and I also travel, and I bring those ideas and try to incorporate them into Frankfort and what I think and what I can do as a volunteer and as potentially a elected official. Thank you.
Mr. Azofeifa, 1 minute.
Listen, my wife and I used to run Capital City Martial Arts, started by Grandmaster John W. Mason II, so I have experience in business. I teach financial literacy and world history, so I have a unique perspective of how government is supposed to work, not just locally, but nationally and internationally. I'm the president of the Hickory Hills of Frankfort Neighborhood Association, and every other month we get together and discuss the issues in our neighborhood, and we attempt to come up with solutions for those. Also on the board of directors for the Simon House for the homeless, and there are a lot of people who talk about how much they care about the homeless, but I don't think that it's a lot of people who actually put skin in their game, actually volunteer down there, actually make donations. But I'm just one who puts the, thank you.
Mr. Richardson, 1 minute, please.
Experience, I mentioned it earlier, almost 25 years with the city. I know the city. I bring a lot of outside resources, working within city agencies as well as outside, in specifics, the state police, other police departments. But I would also say how I've gotten around to other cities. I know a lot of public officials, a lot of chiefs and sheriffs in other towns that I get advice from them. I see their cities, Owensboro, Ashland, Georgetown, you name it. And then government's not that hard. I'm pretty proud that my wife and I have been married 31 years, and we've raised 3 daughters. It's tough. Not tough, but yeah, exactly. I live with 4 women. But that's how government should operate. Both my daughters we put through college. My 2 older daughters, my youngest is a junior at WKU. It's not that hard. You don't spend more than you take in, and you put back money for a rainy day if you need it.
All right, our next question is going to come from Mr. Deppenbrock, and it's going to be directed to you, Mr. May, and you're going to have 1 minute to respond.
Being that our country was built on the backs of businesses, and with many small, medium, and large businesses in our town run by very intelligent people, how would you ensure that local businesses have a voice in the planning and development decisions of our community?
I think it starts by initiating the conversation, letting them know that we're interested in their voice. Then there's going to have to be a mutual respect between both parties there. You know, we've got to come to the table, if you will, literally, and continue to have those conversations and open the door there. The participation is going to matter on both sides. And, you know, again, yeah, I think we are making the necessary steps by continuing to invest in the public infrastructure that surrounds these communities where the investments are happening, and keeping, you know, the open door policy to listen.
Ms. Unger?
Yeah, I think making sure businesses, local businesses have a voice, and that they're being heard. You first have to listen to them. You have to engage, and you have to make changes. And one thing I touched on earlier was trying to go online with certain things like filing of taxes and business licenses. You know, we don't want you to have to stop in City Hall if you don't want to. If you can hop online and pay that, that'd be a whole lot easier. So, you know, there's plenty of conversations that need to be had, but people just need to be listened to and then see change and have you know, commissioners and elected officials being willing to make that change.
Ms. Rosen, 1 minute.
Yes. I think what Commissioner May said about keeping the door open to talk to businesses, I think is very important. When we were considering two-way Main, I visited all of the businesses on Main Street and talked to them about how that would affect their business, if they thought it was good or bad. And there were parking issues and safety issues that we discussed. So I think contacting businesses and talking to them is very important for the commission to do and fits very much into the development of policy. I'm also on the solid waste committee with the county, and we're looking at an ordinance to limit single-use plastics. I have met with a number of businesses and talked to them about how that would affect things. I also attended the Together Frankfort forum on solid waste and how that's affecting nonprofits and small business. So I think keeping lines of communication go open, and I am also concerned about historic buildings and how that can work for businesses. Thank you.
Mr. Azofeifa, 1 minute.
Remember what I said earlier about people talking in glowing generalities and empty promises. My colleague Rob and I have both the endorsements of many business people here in this community, and it's because they know we're willing to listen to business. Not that we are there to pretend to listen and then go behind closed doors in a closed work session and vote against the business owners. It needs to be a open communication process, and it needs to be a transparent process. If we have people who want to develop and planning and zoning are standing in their way, let's find out why planning and zoning is staying in their way instead of taking the position that the business owners are doing the bad thing. It's the business owners that are providing jobs for this community. It's the business owners that are providing the future for our kids in this community.
Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, local businesses should have a voice, and DIG, Downtown Investment Group, is a good group. The city officials need to be listening to those folks. I've talked to those. I think I mentioned one earlier. Luckily, I got a neighbor. That's when I talked to Steel Blue. Just very ashamed of that myself, because that would have been a great company to have here. Although they're not, it would have been a local business. The other thing is, with elected officials having an open door, I do believe that. My phone would, if I get elected, call me. I want to have that phone call. But also making city offices easily accessible and easy to navigate. Policies and procedures sometimes get skewed. And being in police work, it's pretty much specific what a policy should read. We should not have, again, agendas where people feel that, hey, I think this should be the way it is. It just reads different. Encourage all of these business people to attend work sessions, city work sessions with the council, as well as the meetings. They need to have a voice. I 100% think that.
Ms. Smith-Willis, 1 minute.
Thank you. I feel like we all talk about an open door policy, but one of the things that I pride myself in is being accessible, and then one of my core values is family. So, we can listen all day long, but listening without intentionality just leads to emptiness, if you ask me. So I say, why not go to them? They can come to us all day long. They can call us, email us, but sometimes emails go overlooked. So I like to go to them. I like to be, every chance that I get, I find myself walking into businesses asking, hey, are you all good? But I'm not an elected official. I can only do so much right now. So I would rather just go to them and see what they need and look at it as a family. If they're succeeding, we're succeeding in Frankfort and we're growing. So I think working together to see each other succeed and going to them instead of waiting for them to come to us is step number one.
We've going to have our last question of the day. It's going to be from Kathy Lindsay, and we are going to start with you, Ms. Unger. You're going to have 1 minute to respond.
I'm not going to ask the question we ask every time, which is, what are your thoughts on a merged government? But what I do want to ask is something that has come up in a lot of the answers is the importance of communication. And I think when working, things happening between city government and county government, it's a communication issue. I think there needs to be open communications. If there's not going to be a merged form of government, two government entities in our city and county working together towards, similar goals, should have a good form of communication. My question is, what does that look like to you? How can that be improved, and what does that improvement of communication look like?
Yeah, it's really important. You have to have the right people in the right positions. We have two city managers who I think are working really well together and communicating really well with the fiscal court right now. We have a mayor who is compassionate and really good to work with. So the judge and Mayor Lane Wilkerson work really well together and communicate well. And then we come together as a board, and make those decisions. I think, it really comes down to having the right people in the right spot. You can't have someone who is combative or, in it for the wrong reasons. We're all here to better our community, our county, and our city. While I honestly would be supportive of discussing merging certain services, it would honestly, if we went for a full merger, it would totally take too much away from all the projects we have going on. Thank you.
Ms. Rosen, you have 1 minute.
Yes, that is an interesting question. I think I see some successes with the city and county working together, in particular the occupational tax. There's an agreement if there's industrial development in the county, half of that occupational tax will go to the city and half will go to the county. So I think we're making positive steps in planning things out. I have heard comments from people in the county of we're different, we're in the county, and at the same time they're mentioning we don't get to vote for who's running the city of Frankfort. So they identify with Frankfort, but they are separate. So I think the communication between the city and county elected officials is important. I know there have been some joint meetings, which I don't think have been that successful. I think perhaps more forms of communication other than a formal meeting would be good, and that we do need to talk to each other, certainly.
Mr. Azofeifa, 1 minute.
Again, there's a difference between platitudes and empty promises and actual solutions. I think that it would make sense to have some of these offices actually meeting in the same place. For example, when you have the building inspectors, they should be in the same place. You also can think about the basic idea of our park system where the city is in charge of 7, the county's in charge of just 1. I don't understand why they can't be in the same place if they're talking about basically the same things. Sure, I think that one of the hindrances to this is that we actually have people who are title chasers. They're not really interested in serving the community, but they're interested in picking up a government salary at the expense of having some fancy title, and so they can go around saying that they're the grand muckety muck at the expense of the people.
Mr. Richardson, 1 minute.
Communication is vital. What's funny is we do have merged stuff here. Our E911 center dispatches for SO, county fire, city PD. EMS runs county and city. So we do have service. So we have good examples. Those two things run pretty smooth. I do agree with the parks. That could be something that, and I know merger's an ugly word, but if it's going to be more efficient, not easy, but efficient, cost efficiency is what we're looking for, right? Because the city shares a lot of costs with county parks and vice versa, right? City decisions affect the county and vice versa. If I am elected, I will promise you, I will ask for a quarterly meeting with county magistrates and fiscal court. If we don't talk about things, and I mean, we can yell and we can, I'm good with that. I can agree to disagree, but we've got to come together because Frankfort is Franklin County, and it's that. It's not a merger statement. It's just they affect each other. Everything does.
Ms. Smith-Willis, 1 minute.
I agree with a lot of what everybody has said so far. I think there are pillars in each city and county that we could look to continuously work together on, but also just kind of goes back to what I've been standing on, which is accountability. We have to look at the people that we're looking to elect into these positions and to see if they will work cohesively together. You could put us all in one room, but like it's been mentioned, you could yell, scream, but I don't think that's not going to get us anywhere. So I think, holding our elected officials accountable, especially when ones get elected, to have these however many meetings that we do have, to have these conversations, and then to merge the pillars that are already kind of working together to keep working together and to grow.
Thank you very much. Mr. May, 1 minute.
I think keeping an open line of communication between both agencies, of course, is crucial. As candidate Richardson spoke about, we do currently share emergency EMS services. And, for me personally, the question was, what does the communication look like? There's, of course, day-to-day communications and correspondence and emails and things that will pop up that, we need to respond to immediately. But I think having a strategic plan in place for that communication, coming together as a city commission, setting our priorities ahead of time before any meetings that were to be joint, so that we know going into it what our goals are to come out of it. It can, when you get that many people in a room, it can get a little discombobulated, so it's important that both boards be on the same page and have a clear and concise message coming in there. So I would be in support of having those styles of meetings, and then continuing to let both the judge and the mayor report back to their respective boards with any information that's crucial for us to understand.
Y'all have done an excellent job. We've already reached the time for conclusions and closing remarks. We're going to start at the end. We're going to work our way back this way. We'll pick on this end of the table to start with. I think Mr. Richardson can handle it. Mr. Richardson, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks, and your camera is here.
You know, I've lived in this community. My wife and I raised our family for 30 years. I feel that I have the best experience of anyone sitting up here, having been involved in city government. Some things that are really, really tough, these are tough things approaching us, is our sewers, and these are just a few things of sewers. We have projects we want to fund, but you've also got to remember you have to pay the bills. There are services that our community expects that have to come first: police, fire, our streets, everything, city government in a whole. So you got to remember that although we want pools and we want sports complexes, I'm all about that, but we have to find ways to fund them. And how do we do that? We have to grow. We have to grow. I've worked so long in this. We rested our laurels on state government. That's where it was. That was our cash cow. I can tell you that's the majority of the revenue, but it's not going to be there anymore. I also believe that it's time for the state government to kind of share in the cost of the city. This in lieu of tax is not good enough. I don't think that is, but we need to have discussions. I believe I can have that discussions. I think part of what I do and do best is to bring people together and mediate. I can agree to disagree and be friends at the end of the day. But I just ask for your vote come November. We need some change in Frankfort. This is an oasis town. Everyone around us has exponentially grown, and it's time for us to capitalize on what we have here. Our tourism, Buffalo Trace, countless people's come into this city, and it's time for us to make a change. And I ask for your vote.
Mr. Azofeifa, you have 2 minutes for your closing statements.
Again, I want to thank FPB. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. I believe that I am very qualified to sit on this city commission because of my understanding of finances, my understanding of government, and not just the knowledge that I have on those things, but my passion for this community and my love for this community. Again, I am the president of the Hickory Hills of Frankfort Neighborhood Association, and we work together as neighbors, and we know that building communities starts by individual neighborhoods galvanizing together here, not just Bell Point versus Farmdale or Farmview. We have to all work toward a common cause. When I sit back and think about some of the bigger problems in Frankfort, like the rock slide over at Taylor Avenue, and from what some folks have talked to me about from the sewer department, they say if we have another one of those, then it could disrupt the entire water service on the west side of Frankfort. We have the Singing Bridge that's closed down, and we have recent evidence that the Capital City Bridge is not sustainable. And so we have to make sure to take care of our infrastructure, and in order to do that, it takes somebody who understands the role of government and understands that taxpayer money is hard-earned money. There are people with 2 jobs, there are people with 3 jobs and more, people out there with fixed incomes. So when we think about the fact that our property taxes are the highest in central Kentucky, including Lexington, that's bad. When our occupational taxes are the highest in central Kentucky except for Lexington, that's bad. My name is Delvin Azofeifa, and I'm asking for your vote.
Ms. Rosen, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Thank you. I'm Anna Marie Rosen. I'm asking you for your vote on November 5th. I want to work with you to help lower utility bills, attract new businesses, and work on steps that will help with climate change. I believe in listening to voters, to residents of Frankfort, and I believe in the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I want to hear from everyone. As a commissioner, my first effort will be to draw the commission, the 4 commissioners and the mayor together and set priorities on where we want to go so that we can focus on specific needs. I want to work with the team members and find things that we can accomplish here in Frankfort. There are many things that we need: a new swimming pool, housing at all income levels, increasing access to the river, attractive compensation for fire, police, EMS, and city staff. And to help the environment, there are things we can do: reducing plastic waste, mitigate stormwater drainage, which is a bigger problem all the time, reduce night lighting going up into the atmosphere, which is affecting bird migration and also our ability to see the stars. There are many goals. To reach these objectives, we need industrial development. We need to work on completing the comprehensive plan and making it work for promoting people to come here and live and work. I think attracting industrial development will be the most important thing we can do. And making it a good place to live for everyone. Thank you for your vote.
Ms. Unger, you have 2 minutes for your
Thank
closing
you.
remarks. This camera.
Thank you. At first, I'd like to thank everybody for being here and for the opportunity to speak to you today, as well as everybody that might be listening later. It is an honor to sit here as a current city commissioner. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have just laughed, but I care about Frankfort so much, and I'm really enjoying all of the projects and progress that we've gotten started over the last 3.5 years. I'm running because I want to keep fighting for the citizens of Frankfort, and I really think that continuity is going to be very important to keep some of these projects going. Something that I haven't been able to talk about today is the Affordable Housing Committee and some of the projects that or discussions that we are having right now. We have an affordable housing consultant that we're working with some of our local partners, the fiscal court, as well as the housing authority. So there are many projects and RFPs on the horizon, and like I said, I think some continuity is going to be really important to keep all these balls rolling. And I'm like I said, it's an honor to be here today and to be a city commissioner, and I'm excited about all of the potential future projects, including a convention center, maybe a pool or two, and some work on our housing issue. So I would appreciate your vote come November or whenever you decide to vote, because I know voting is actively happening. So thank you so much.
Mr. May, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you again to Frankfort Plant Board and Chamber of Commerce for having us. It's been a great day of discussion. A lot of things have been said that have reminded me that there's one very common thing amongst all of us sitting up here, and I think it's that we all really want the same thing. We want a town that has jobs that are available and provide a cost of living, an affordable cost of living with benefits to us. We know the task ahead to accomplish these. Like some of the other members have said, the plans are coming into place now. The comprehensive plan and the marching orders will be given to us, and we'll be able to start putting together the puzzle that is Frankfort, that makes us so unique and wonderful. We have been smart, strategic in how we have invested our money by seeking grant fundings and opportunities to inspire economic growth, $150 million multi-use development with Target, and that project will have additional commercial growth and housing as well. Very proud of the $20 million grant that we have applied for the Home Street Census Tract to help residents make their homes more efficient and energy efficient. That'll help those who are energy burdened, help lower costs, and help bring new investment to that community as well. So there are a lot of exciting things that we're doing, and I appreciate the opportunity to help inspire some of those things and to have worked on those projects, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
Katima Smith-Willis, you get the final word.
Last but not least.
Last 2 minutes.
Great. I also want to thank you all for having me here today. As I was listening to the other candidates, I really couldn't help but to just reflect on just being honored to sit here. If you would have asked me when I was 17, dropping out of high school, doing homeschooling, and just trying to figure out life, if I would be running for office, I would laugh at you. So I'm just honestly really honored. Just reflecting on the conversation that we had here today, there's a lot to know about the inner workings of our community. And when I think about community, I think about family and the future and change. I think just growing up here in Frankfort, I've seen our city be stagnant over the years and not a lot of growth in areas for the youth. And that's been my one driver this entire time. I have a mentee with the Wanda Joyce Robinson Foundation, and she's been behind the scenes with me, and we've been learning together, and I've been telling her about things such as, city government. So I've been learning along the way, too. So when it comes to things such as tourism, infrastructure, small businesses, big businesses, and anything in between, I really just want to keep being accessible to people, and I want to be a voice for also the marginalized. So, it's just been a really great experience, and I'm honored. And between now and August 31st, I think that's when early voting starts. I'm open and I'm here, and I want to hear any ideas people have. And it's not a win or lose thing for me. This has just really been a really humbling experience, but I would be very honored to have your vote on November 5th. And my name is Katima Smith-Willis.
As we close, I would like to personally thank all of you all for seeking this office. You've put your name on the ballot, spent your own time and money, skipped out on family events only to serve your community, and I want you to know that all of us appreciate your time. You all have done a great job in this forum, excellent work, and I wish you the very best in this election. There have been some election law changes statewide in the last several years, and now there are multiple ways to cast your ballot in this election. Mail-in absentee voting, in-person early voting before Election Day, October 31st, Friday, November 1st, and Saturday, November 2nd. There are 3 locations in the county. You could show up at any polling place. In-person on Election Day voting, November 5th, 2024. There will be 12 polling locations all across Franklin County. You could show up at any one and vote at any location. As you know, 2024 is a presidential election year. Statewide, this ballot includes all 6 congressional seats, the entire State House of Representatives, half of the Kentucky State Senate, and many local and jurisdictional elected positions. And voters will have a decision to make on 2 constitutional amendments. To say the least, it's an important election. If you don't know where to vote or how to vote, I'd encourage everyone to call the Franklin County Clerk's office at 502-875-8702. Staff will help you figure it out. Check out their website. It's loaded with current election information. I sincerely hope that you take the time to honor our servicemen, women, and veterans and exercise your right on November 5th, 2024. It's been an honor to serve as the MC for this event. I'd like to thank all the volunteers, all the FPB staff, all the chamber folks to make all of this work and this event possible. That concludes this forum. Thank you for joining us.